the second town hall meeting of the Arts and Exhibitions community. As has gone on with all of the COVID-19 issues and everything else, things continue to be in a state of flux and moving quickly. So when Bonnie and I were talking about originally what the next topics might be, we suddenly needed to shift gears because we realized that many institutions were already reopening when we were talking about, you know, what to do when you're not quite open yet. So today I'm really excited to have Dr. Ann Tippett with us. She is from the Schiele Museum in Gastonia, North Carolina. And they are a natural history museum that is owned by the city. And I know that she would have loved to have opened up when the governor of North Carolina recently announced that we went into phase 2, but the governor specifically said that museums are not allowed to open during this time. So, but I thought that it would be great to have Dr. Tippett talk to us because they actually hit on a number of different things that our gardens hit on also. They have outdoor spaces, they've got indoor spaces, they do create their own exhibits, they bring in traveling exhibits. So a lot of different things working with animals and plants and things like that also. So I'm really excited for Dr. Tippett to be here, and I'll just hand it over to her.
Well, thank you. And I'm sorry, I can see all of you, but you can't see me. Oh, that's good. A T-Rex. A T-Rex. It has been an interesting journey. Operating a public facility, as all of you well know, is always a challenge. Anytime you're dealing with the general public, you have not only the matters of health and safety to be concerned with, but you have, you know, what have you done for me lately? What's new? You know, that continual chain of thought that goes on. And so in looking at this, we started quite some time back in February, developing a plan for how we would handle this. And then we closed to the public on March the 13th. And we have been closed to the public since then. As Patrick said, part of our funding comes from the city of Gastonia, and part of our funding comes from our private nonprofit board. And the city decided to declare all city employees as essential employees. So there were basically no layoffs within the city. We did shift some staff around to other departments when we no longer had constructive work for them to do. We shared some custodians with some other departments. Now, my fear is whether I will ever get them back or not. This is an entirely different story. But we have a building, it's about, the public space is about 75,000 square feet. And there's a lot to touch quite intentionally in our building. It's a very spread out building. And for purposes that we now understand with some of the virus issues, it's a one way in, one way out. So we do not have a, you can loop part of the tour, but you have to, we basically bring everybody in and out of a main front entrance. And that's where the ticketing happens. That's where our museum store is. That's where the restrooms are. We have other restrooms throughout the building. And so it's been a real interesting process to go through and think how we would start bringing people back in our building. We used that time I hope, very constructively, and I feel that it was very constructive. We used that time to paint handrails, things that, you know, things you can't normally do. And we're only closed 4 days a year. We're closed Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, and Christmas Day. And other than that, we're open. So there are a lot of maintenance kinds of things that are very, very difficult to do when you're open that much of the year. So we took this as a time, and we've finished a lot of paint up, fix up projects, did some exhibit repair, and we're just about at the long end of that list. A week or two ago, we started thinking seriously that the governor would allow us to open. And we've had a lot of internal discussion. We already had our cleaning cycles and our cleaning times of the day set up. We had our distancing measures already worked out. But we've had a big internal discussion as to whether we count people, and because we determined that we could have, based on some of the formulas for retail, that we could have 150 people in the building at a time safely. And so there's a lot of debate amongst the staff as to whether we do that by just counting people at the door, 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going to have to wait. We thought that we might serve our visitors and our customers better if we did an advance sale, a timed ticket. So you knew you were coming to the museum and your interval was 10 o'clock to noon. And that is still where we are. That is still our plan, is to try that. I think we all know that we can make all the plans in the world, but once we get the public back in our building, we're going to learn a lot of things from them, and we need to really be paying attention. And we've been very conscious of the need for us to do a lot of visitor observation. We're going to do a lot of interviews. We are strongly suggesting that people have a mask. I think the city probably has some aversion to us saying if you don't have a mask, you can't come in. But it's going to be a very strong thing on our part. We've constructed a very nice barrier to protect our guest services people. And we think with 150 and with a time ticket schedule, that will give us at least 3 intervals during the day to go through and wipe down and do some sanitizing. There are a few exhibits we're still debating as to whether to leave on the floor for the time being that have a lot of buttons on them. We have an insect exhibit that has little rails, and you can pull the rails up and down and moving the magnifier glass around. And it's a very popular exhibit. We have an exhibit called Flowers at Your Fingertips, which was one of the original pieces in the very first museum in 1960. It's probably built in early 61, this particular exhibit. Our founder, R.A.M. Schiele, was with Boy Scouts of America, and that's what he did from 1924 here until his retirement in 1957. And he was an avid, and you just fill in the blank. He was an avid photographer, minerals, insects. He mounted a lot of the taxidermy specimens that we have. He collected a lot of things, and he took an incredible number of both color and black and white photographs. And we have about 1,500 4x4 color slides, if you will, of wildflowers that he took. And so he created this exhibit called Flowers at Your Fingertips. And it's a very simple, connect, disconnect. The electronics of it's very easy. So you can push on the flower and then you can push on the name, and, everything lights up if you got it right. And it's a very popular thing, even for people who don't really take the time to get the educational content out of it. Because sometimes the kids are over there playing it like it's a piano. It's a special piece to the museum history. I hate to take it off the floor. Do you put a cover over it? There's a lot of things. If we move it, where do we move it? Do we risk doing some damage to it while we move it? So there's there's a few things like that we have not firmly nailed down. We have been going to as much a virtual experience as I know a lot of you have probably done the same thing. A lot of social media. We've been doing creature feature. So we've gotten into the movie business. Real homemade movies. Some of the early ones were really homemade, but the public's appreciated it. So we've been doing that. Now our outdoor area, we are going to be able to open it. In fact, we're opening on Saturday. It's been open under phase 2 and under phase 1. The governor said that nature trails could be open. And I kind of wondered, Patrick, if you guys would take advantage of that. You know, you have a nature trail. But we were still a little bit wary of how that was going to go. But we've been having the trail open now for a week. It's being respectfully used so far. The word spread very quick when we took down the barriers. It's mainly the dog walkers and the F3 exercise group. They spread the word to everybody. Oh, the Schiele's open, which was a bit of a public relations thing there for a while. It's like the trail is open, but the museum's not open, which means for us, the restaurant, we have no outdoor access to it. But we will be opening not only the trail, but we will be opening our farm area that we've been working on renovating for the last few months. This little interval of time away has given us a chance to do some really good renovations, get some heavy equipment in the farm and level some things out. So we've made that productive, but we'll also be opening our Indian village. Now the Indian village is more of a high touch spot than the farm is in some ways. The farm is interactive in different ways. But in the Indian village, we usually have displays of stone tools and baskets, and there's someone there talking and explaining what these things are and being able to interact with the public, you know, in that way. So we're just going to play it by ear, see how this goes this weekend, and then we'll see what the governor says. Not until the last statement in phase 2 did he publicly exclude museums. And we're not sure what brought that on, except there are 4 of the bigger museums, of which we are one, that have been petitioning him. And so we maybe stuck our head up and called museums to his attention. But I think there was an attitude that wouldn't it be great within the state government to reopen all of our museums on the same day in the same way. And just as your places are all different, there's every kind of museum in the state of North Carolina. I mean, you can imagine. So that's kind of who we are and what we've been doing. We've been trying to be very strategic and keeping up with what we are learning. I don't think this is over. Any of us stay in this profession a little bit longer. I think something like this will come around again. So we've been trying to keep a little record of lessons that we've learned. And so I'd be happy to entertain any questions, or do you have any questions for me, Patrick?
Yeah, and so this is Patrick. And we didn't take advantage of the governor's opening during phase 1 for various reasons, but today is our first day that we're open to members, so that's good. Yay! So we're going to be open. We're going to be open to members for several weeks while we try out all of our various protocols and things like that, and see how people are behaving before we actually open to the general public. So we're doing it very slow and incremental. I've actually shortened the days that we're open and also our hours as well. But yes. But Anne, how has this affected your thoughts about your exhibit schedule, and how has that impacted you?
Well, we had 2 traveling exhibits basically lined up to come in middle to the end of the summer, and then into the summer, into the fall. And both of those we've had to adjust the schedules. One of the exhibits is in a museum in Virginia, and that museum is closed and may be closed for the foreseeable future. So it took some intense negotiations with that museum. Since there was no one there, that was hard to figure out how to get that exhibit and get it here. They were without staff to pack it. The complications just really built there for a while, and so we just pushed it off. Then we were able to relocate that in the schedule, and I believe as of yesterday, we've successfully relocated the one that comes after that. What has changed is that, well, first of all, we will not have a flashy temporary exhibit or a new exhibit when visitors come back to us, whether it's, next week or the 26th. And I think there will be some disappointment there. It also has not been the time to do fundraising. So a big Arctic culture and nature exhibit we had planned centered around fall that we were going to expand. That schedule has really been pushed back and extended because trying to raise money for that at a time when the Community Foundation and the United Way are really struggling raising money, for people struggling with the impact of the virus. That's been a very hard thing on our exhibits, and we have not totally found our way out of that one yet. So how we come up with what that new thing is still something that we'll have the 2 temporary exhibits that will be coming up. But that'll be late summer, and then into the early part of the fall, we'll have a change out.
And you had mentioned that you felt like you were going to be able to go through and disinfect all the touch surfaces and everything in the museum about 3 times a day. Are you staffing up for that? Who is doing that? What's changed there?
We are sort of repositioning some of the staff that will be there, especially on the weekends, but we don't have the opportunity to add staff. It's going to take a lot of diligence. And we are putting up some signage that promotes health, all the healthy things that people are probably so tired of seeing. But we've done some nice graphics. We've got hand sanitizer in some places. The bottom line is we are primates, and we are going to touch and feel things, and so just making people aware, just as our outdoor signage says, you're out in nature, be careful. There are things out here that bite and sting. I think we basically are given somewhat of that same message inside, not touch at your own risk, but be cautious, make good decisions.
So for the outdoor spaces, and you mentioned that the Indian Village was a high touch space. How are you working with that in terms of some of the cleaning and disinfecting schedules for there?
The person that's going to be doing the programs will probably sort of disinfect as needed, because sometimes people come to the program and they don't touch everything on the table. And there are other times they come and they touch everything on the table. So she's just going to be, she's aware, she's a real germaphobe. So that's going to be one of those learning things too. People may be afraid to touch things. And these are all things that, you know, are replicas. And so they're safe to be touched. And all of them are fabrics and materials that can be sanitized. But we all know none of it's going to be perfect.
Is there anything that the city is saying in terms of, you know, imposing on you with regard to the protocols that they've laid out for the rest of the their buildings and things like that, that, you know, that you're finding difficult to implement there?
No, not really. In fact, the document that we put together dealing with our response not only to the virus while we were closed, but our reopening thing has kind of become a model that's used in other areas, being used in other areas. Now, the city's been very cooperative. They've been very, and they've been very supportive of our efforts to reopen. They're looking at the revenue line. I know what's going on there.
I'm not surprised. You have a indoor, for lack of a better word, play space there. Were you going to have that open up as well?
No, we've removed. You mean the puppet theater?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've removed the puppets.
Okay.
It was, they were due for a good cleaning and replacement and repair anyway, so we did pull the puppets.
Great.
And we've had a lot of questions about our hands-on animal programs, and there are a lot of people that, you know, are very, very wary, and there is a lot of unknown about, you know, species to species transmission. So we're probably going to be doing less of that, offering everybody a chance to, you know, touch our snakes or turtles. But we're used to a lot of sanitizing in those kinds of programs because of salmonella, you know, with any of our reptiles and amphibians.
Perfect.
And the little hedgehog was quite a star in his creature feature. And after that ran, I was besieged by pictures from people of little African hedgehogs, you know, floating in kayaks and crawling in and out of tents. And I was really glad we didn't take that approach.
Good.
It has led, though, an interesting thing, though, Patrick. Without so much contact with our visitors, there seems to be a lot more interest in knowing what's the animal's name. We've had that question a lot more than we usually do. So here's our, here's our American king snake. Well, and then people will be typing in, what's its name? It's an American king snake. And so we have fought off naming animals for a long time at the museum. But unfortunately, as a result of this, we have 2 or 3 animals that now have names. And people are remembering those names. And that's just when you have something, as you do with your plants, as we do with our animals, they don't live forever. So
yeah,
we had to make a possum transition, and a lot of people recognized us, like, wait a minute, where's Avery the possum? Because Avery had been hit by a car, and he had a particular, a very distinctive look to his face because of that. And then the possum that we have now was also hit by a car. And he ended up losing an eye. So it's a very different, you can really tell, they're not all alike. So it's a very different experience. And we had to do some explaining about what happened to Avery. And we had to basically online explain, that he got sick and he died. So, something our animal folks don't like to do.
Yeah. Well, Anne, thank you so much for your time today. You're welcome to stay on for the rest of the call if you'd like. We're going to open it up to some larger conversation, you know, around gardens and what people are doing right now. But I really appreciate it. And
thank you. I will have to sign off. I have a board meeting, a Zoom meeting here shortly. And as all of you well know, there's always at least 2 issues that you thought you had settled. And then you find out, you know, a few hours before the meeting, it's like, oh, I thought we were going left, not right. So I have a couple, nothing grave, but okay. I do have a couple of things I need to step away and go be sure that I've got everything lined up for. And this will be the first time, I don't know if you've met with, any of you have met with your boards by Zoom or committees. This will be the first time for the Schiele board to try this out. So I'm going to be very interested in the meeting dynamics.
Well, good luck with that. Thanks
Thank
again.
You. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, Anne. Okay, Bonnie, I'll pass it over to you to move on to the next section of the call.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us, and it was quite interesting listening to her talk, and I'm sure a lot of you are all going through the same thing. As Patrick mentioned earlier, we really wanted to just kind of focus on the right here and the right now. What are we dealing with? And a big part of it is opening back up. How are we doing that? And has all of this really impacted exhibitions? And so we kind of just identified a couple questions that we wanted to throw out to the group. And really this is just more of a open conversation, kind of Q&A, just kind of just where I want to have an open conversation about where we're all at and how we're all handling all of this. So I don't know how we want to do this. Do we want to unmute everybody and just go rogue, or?
Yeah, I was going to say, Sarah, if I don't know if people have the power to unmute themselves, but if you, I guess we might start with everybody unmuting. If you could start with unmuting everybody.
I'm creating an allowance for folks to talk, so they will be able to unmute themselves.
Okay, great.
I know a big thing that in the last couple years that we've all been really moving to is really engaging interactive experiences for our guests, and now that's like the worst thing to have with what's going on. And so a lot of us have these interactive components or experiences. I know that there's traveling exhibitions and that have these components too, and each of us are dealing with them all a little bit differently. As Anne was saying, you know, leaving some things they're going to leave out on display and just wipe down a couple times throughout the day. Other things are getting pulled off display. So how are you guys all handling that? Is it kind of a mix? What's your plans?
If anybody's trying to talk, it looks like most people are muted still, so you'll need to unmute yourself.
And certainly chat me if you are trying to unmute yourself and you are not succeeding. I believe everyone should be switched to the option to be able to unmute themselves now.
Yeah. So I'm going to put Ed Lyon on the spot, and hopefully he's actually still on and not just in name only. But with the Nature Connects exhibit, I know that like some of the supplemental stuff with the Legos and things like that, while the exhibit itself was not a high touch sort of thing, some of the supplemental items were. And I know with the other exhibit that y'all created, that one was high touch. So how are you thinking through how you would modify that exhibit going forward, or just, since you have been on the forefront of creating some of these, what's your thought process going forward about how you're going to do other exhibits?
That's a good question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. And coincidentally, we're setting up number 5 right now today in the gardens here. The one thing about Nature Connects, and the artist, Sean Kenny, right from the start had dictated some of the conditions that Nature Connects is put on Nature Connects when it goes to a site, and one of those is barriers. So every site that did Nature Connects has to put barriers around them with no more than a 4-foot span in, which is about, how far an adult could reach in. So that one was already set up not to be touched in the first place. There is one element of it. There is a mosaic face cutout that goes with each of those exhibits. And we ourselves and everybody that's had the exhibits during COVID have all decided that that one sits out the exhibit because that is one that people can actually go up to, they can touch, and certainly putting your face in one of these closed holes is not an option at this point. So to some degree, Nature Connects already corrected itself with the barriers that have to be up. We are about ready to retrieve Nature of the Game, which was every single piece, and that was designed to be interactive. They are all giant representatives of different games we're familiar with botanical themes. So it's been sitting down at Harry P. Lou as they're closed. We are bringing it back. It's going to sit while we try to see where COVID takes us for these types of exhibits. What's tragic with this one is that when we developed, we thought we were doing something really amazing, creating something that would be durable enough to be interactive. And at that, obviously, we thought that was going to be a great thing and had no idea we'd be looking at a time period where you can't touch things. It could result in ultimate retirement of the piece if things don't change. And that'll be a significant amount of money. There's about $350,000 invested in that, and we've only had one rental out of it. But at the same time, if that's what needs to be done, that's what we will have to do. So I just have to say, with that one in particular, Patrick, right now, we're going to bring it back here. We're going to sit and wait through, probably the fall to see what types of changes COVID does mean to us. But we may very well have created an exhibit that will not go back out on the road again. Not sure how to adapt it to not be touched. Does that answer your question?
No, that was great. Thanks, Ed. Jacqueline at the Scott Arboretum said that they're doing a lot of virtual versions of their offerings, tours, lectures, and all being free of charge, and that they've been able to remain open this entire time, and that they've had lots of visitors. So. Karen, I'm going to put you on the spot if it's not too big of an issue. I just wanted to see, because I know y'all have historically done, some fantastic seasonal exhibits and have been able to put some of those out for travel and things like that. I'm just wondering how all of this has affected how you're looking at your exhibits right now.
Me, Karen?
Yes, you, Karen.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
sorry, Karen Dobman. Should have been specific. I'm just way too familiar.
No, sorry. Well, I think the plan that we have right now is we're planning to reopen July 15th, which will be just grounds only. And we're uncertain about when we will be able to open the conservatory. We were meant to have the Kusama exhibition this summer. We've moved it to next year. And right now we're just putting all of our eggs in our traditional crowd-pleasing exhibits like Holiday Train Show and Kusama, and some of the smaller things that we had planned to do are slowly dissolving. We just started working with a company called Integrated Insights out of Florida to help us to figure out how we can model capacity for the conservatory for reopening the train show. And what we've decided to do is try and run the train show as long as possible, since it's something we're investing in. So we would normally open it around Thanksgiving, but we're going to open it, install it in September, and open it much earlier. Yeah, and you know, we're sort of in a standstill about planning for future stuff. And, you know, like I said, we're going to open June 15th. We're going to ramp up over time. We're going to have limited time tickets. Everyone needs a ticket to enter the garden. Everyone needs to wear a mask. We have cleaning protocols in place. And we're going to ramp up through the course of the fall and probably do maybe one outdoor sculpture and pumpkins and things like that. But we're really going to try and disperse our visitors throughout the landscape. We will not have our trams in effect. We're not hiring back a lot of our part-time ticket takers and a lot of our tram drivers. So it's going to be a real focus on collections. We're we've been working on and we're ready to push out a sort of Power of Plants exhibition so that people can learn more about the healing properties of plants, which will be online shortly. And then when the garden reopens this fall, part of the sort of fall component package will be this Power of Plants exhibition with a couple of guided walking tours. So, yep, mostly outdoor, Power of Plants, fall flowers and pumpkins, and welcome people back in a very controlled and moderated way for Holiday Train Show. Everything we're planning for possible second and third waves of pandemic. And we're hoping that, you know, the plan is to not install any major work in a place where something else in the future has to be. So planning for Kusama, we're hoping to, you know, not put the Christmas tree up in the same place we need a Kusama sculpture next year, because I don't want to have to run away from the garden and come back to have to deinstall a Christmas tree with orange needles on it, and, you know, in the same spot where I quickly have to install another artwork. So really thinking through where to put the eggs in the baskets and extending shows and footprints as much as possible.
Great, thank you, Karen.
I think that's definitely something that the conservatory is, Franklin Park Conservatory is looking at too. It's really thinking about how you can spread out the experiences as much as possible, covering as much footprint as possible, and like kind of spreading it all out. But one thing that we're really thinking about is, you know, we've had a lot of staff cuts and aren't able to bring back the same amount of people that we used to be. And so it may not even be physically possible to do as much as what we used to be able to do. You know, you used to be able to throw up thousands and thousands of holiday lights, but now do you have the staff and the actual resources to be able to do that? And some of these big installations and things that you install require you to be very close to other people to do that. And so, you know, thinking about how you still, you know, do social distancing while installing these different experiences with minimal staff and small budget is, it's just we're having to just think a little bit differently about how we approach everything. Whereas before, we just didn't have to think that deeply about it.
Patrick, this is Tanya Zastra with the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center. We've been doing Fort Lan Dia for the past 2 years, and we were supposed to do our 3rd year this fall. And much like the exhibit with Ryman Gardens, it's very much a touch exhibit and very much and so we are looking at doing a backup plan for that and looking for a possible exhibit to replace Fort Lan Dia, possible look but don't touch exhibit, because Fort Lan Dia is so high touch, so interactive. But at the same time, we're also looking, if we do Fort Lan Dia, how would we do it? We normally do 10 forts. So if we do it, maybe we'll just do 5 forts. And then would we disinfect them certain times throughout the day? We've been open for a couple weeks now with timed entry. And actually we've had very little to no problems. It's been very smooth. And we will probably keep that going throughout. If Fort Lan Dia was open, we'd keep that going where there'd be timed entry, so many people limited on the grounds at the same time. But how do you, still makes me nervous, right? What if there is that second stage that hits, and then people have put all their effort and time into it. So we're looking at possibly not doing Fort Lan Dia this year, holding it next fall in 2021. The RFP closes June 12th. So that's kind of our deadline for when we're gonna make that decision. And then possibly taking our light show illuminations and making that longer and doing something instead with that.
And Tanya, just really quickly, what is Fort Lan Dia?
Fort Lan Dia is it's our fort exhibit. So it's all about connecting to that inner childhood. And we put a call out for local artists and designers to build forts. And a fort can be anything, right? When you're a child, no one told you how to build a fort. You would build it out of whatever you had. It might be blankets in your living room, or it might be snow. It might be sticks. It could be anything. So our forts, if you go to #Fort Lan Dia on Instagram, you can kind of see a lot of what people did. I'll put that in the chat window here to give you an idea of what people did. It was very popular. Thankfully, we are surviving right now so much better off than we would have if we did not do Fort Lan Dia last fall and winter. Our attendance went up like 80%, and membership increased dramatically. So thanks to such a strong fall and winter, it helped make up for not being open in March, all of April and part of May.
As part of your RFP, I don't know when you actually put it out, but did you think about including something on having the designers think through the whole COVID-19 or social distancing or any of those sorts of things?
The RFP was technically supposed to close right around when we closed, right around March 13th or so. And so we actually extended it through June 12th. And at that point, we were debating, what do we do, what do we not do? And we decided to just have designers think about COVID and think about the surfaces that you're using. It's supposed to be all natural, natural pieces, sustainable pieces, you know, get away from the plastic, that type of thing. But we didn't address COVID specifically, but we did tell them that we might have to close it down depending upon if there's an outbreak or anything like that.
Sarah, is it okay to talk about the design and planning thing that's going to be coming up where?
Yes.
Okay, because that's exactly what I was thinking as she was talking about.
Yes, sir. I'm happy for you to talk about that, and I'm happy to share what I can that's helpful.
I was actually going to say, why don't you go ahead and do the plug, since you're the connection between that group also.
Sure. Yeah, I'm very excited during our virtual annual conference that actually, I think the registration just launched during this town hall. Very exciting. I think it just, I just saw it open. So I know, please stay on the town hall right now, but as soon as you get off, you can go to our website, to our conference website, and check it out. Very exciting. You will be able to join us, hopefully. We have a very accessible conference planned. One of the new special sessions, obviously things in the world have changed. So we're really creating a lot of special sessions that are, of this moment. One in particular is where we have turned what would have normally been a rapid fire style celebrate design type session. We're actually turning that into a panel discussion, really looking at some of the design challenges and how the design community can really think about aspects of reopening. And just there's so many creative and interesting designers who are lending themselves to this conversation. So I think it's going to be really cool. I can tell you when it's going to happen. Let's see, the exact date of that conversation will be June 30th. We're going to have 4 big half days for our annual conference in the virtual version. And it's going to be a Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday. There's even a special kickoff on June 25th, which is free for everyone. But that special session is going to have folks from gardens. It's also going to have a set of landscape architects and a number of different people talking about just what are the creative ways that can be design solutions, and how can we design things that feel intuitive for guests, and how can we really help, especially in those difficult locations. There's all these pinch points, I guess they call them, places in gardens where people are coming in, they're filing in, and they're having to be in close quarters, trying to remove those barriers, but also thinking about people with young children and how, you can't always control small children. So are there relief valves for folks who are in that situation where they simply can't keep control all the time, or it just kind of ruins the experience. So really, really exciting conversation. If anybody has ideas they want to contribute, I know we're still working on assembling all of the content for that. So we are going to be doing a really cool little, maybe a montage of video and ideas and images. So this group is welcome to reach out to me. You can certainly email me if you have anything that you've seen that's really cool that you'd like to contribute and share. I'd love to hear from you.
Great. Bonnie, you had some sources of information and everything that you wanted to share?
I do. And sorry about my dog just a little bit ago. And then I couldn't figure out how to mute and unmute. And so I put together just a couple different links, and I'm sure most of you are aware of them, but I just wanted to kind of just put them so they were in one location for all of you. One, the CDC is obviously a #1 place to be going for the most up-to-date information about COVID-19. But there was one page that I thought was really good for our group, which was how it spreads. And that information it's changing, right? We learned so much more about this disease, and so we're just, how that spreads and what we know about that is different now than what it was a month ago. A month ago, I was fully prepared to clean every single sign in our building, and now that might not be as necessary. So just kind of reading up on that is always good. AAM, the American Alliance Museum, has a number of resources and information to help. So I threw that on there. But also put on the National Park Service. They put out a thing for exhibitory guides, and so that one's pretty good. And that also took you to a thing that the Canadian Conservation Institute put out. And on that one, this link specifically, if you click on it, it takes you to a list of questions, basically questions that we're all asking and ways to approach it. But then it also has a multiple page of just page after page of resources for every different type of topic. And so I thought that one I found the most interesting and the most useful for myself. And then obviously APGA has some amazing resources that they have put together on their website, so checking out that. And this is just like a really tiny snippet of information that you can find out online. There's just a ton of stuff, but a couple sources that thought you could be useful for all of you.
Thank you for that, Bonnie. Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself there too. We all do that. Just a couple other things before we wrap up here. One is I don't know that we've ever officially announced, and I guess it's still not official, but we're unofficially not going to be having the Arts and Exhibitions meeting in Florida this year for obvious reasons. But I really wanted to thank, why am I drawing a blank? Yeah, Jeannie Perales for being willing to host us there, and we will certainly be picking back up on the planning and everything for that, so that we can have an in-person symposium in the future. But I think everybody understands all the reasons why we're not doing that this year, and would certainly encourage you to attend the virtual conference this year. It sounds like APGA has done and the staff have done a fantastic job of shifting so that they can make so many of the sessions and everything available in a virtual kind of way. Are there any other questions or topics that anybody wanted to discuss? Feel free to unmute yourself. No? Okay. So we'll send out another survey just to kind of see what sorts of topics and everything everyone would be interested in talking about in a future meeting. Thank you to everyone who participated today, and please continue to be active on the community page on the APGA website. So good luck to everybody who is in the process of reopening, and I hope that all goes well. And certainly feel free to reach out to anybody in the group for any questions that you might have or advice about what you can be doing in your own garden. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks, Bob.